I love cats. I've always loved cats. There's nothing I like more than sitting in my rocker with a little kitty cat curled up in my lap, softly purring while I massage its velvety ears. For a while there, any cat would do. I just wanted a cat. But then in 1970, my brother gave me a Siamese cat for my 18th birthday. I named him Beau Garçon, that's pretty boy in French. And I didn't think I was going to like him. I didn't think I was going to like him because I had seen Lady and the Tramp. And the Siamese cats in that movie were evil. But Beau, he would follow me wherever I went from room to room, sit outside the bathroom while I was in there, lie on the bathroom floor while I took a bath. And when I would sit down, he'd plop down right beside me. When I would go to bed at night, he'd curl up against my neck and purr in my ear. He was such a wonderful cat. And I loved him so much that when he passed on, I got another Siamese cat. And when that cat passed on, I got another one. By the time my father had died in 1987, I was owning my fifth Siamese cat, and her name was Marisa. And I was driving from Portsmouth, Virginia, to take my mother to live in my home in Hartford, Connecticut. And my mother did not like cats. We drove down the road a little ways, and she said, "You still got that cat?" I said, "Yes, Mama. Me and Marisa are together till death does us part." My mother said, "You're not trying to tell me you want to marry it, are you?" And I said, "Mama, I love this cat." And she said, "Well, don't you know, if you put that cat in a room by yourself, you're in a room by yourself, and that cat comes in and sees you, it's going to jump right up on you and suck the breath right out of your body, and you're going to die." And I said, "Mama, I've been living with Marisa for 5 years. She sleeps with me every night, and I'm still breathing." And then she said, "Don't you know, if you've got nice furniture, it ain't going to be nice long because those cats have those long, sharp fingernails." And I said, "It's like I told you, Mama. She's my cat. We're together till death does us part. And my furniture's fine." Well, after that, she didn't say anything until we got home. And we walked into my kitchen through the outside door. And there's Marisa cuddled up in the middle of the kitchen. And there was my mama glaring down at her. And they stared one another down for about 30 seconds. And then Marisa stood up and walked away. The next day, I was making lunch when Marisa rubbed across my leg with her lean body. And my mother said, "I can't believe you let that cat in your kitchen." I said, "Mama, what you don't understand is that Marisa is a special cat." And my mother says, "I don't see nothing special about it." I said, "That's because you don't know that Marisa can talk. Cats can't talk." As if by magic, right on cue, Marisa turned around and walked over to the kitchen door, looked back at me and said, "Meow." I said, "See, Mama?" He said, "Meow." Why, it did sound like it said that. I looked at Marisa and said, "Marisa, you can't go out." And she said, "Why?" I said, "See, Mama? She wants to know why." "Well, it did sound like she said that." I said, "Marisa, you cannot go out because I said so." "Oh, no." "See, Mama," she said, "Oh, no." It did sound like she said, "Oh, no." What else does she say? And I said, "Mama, Marisa is a cat of few words, but she's a good listener, and she always keeps a secret." Later that afternoon, I decided to go downstairs and do my laundry. And as I did, I noticed the light in the family room was on. I kind of looked through the crack in the door. And there on my sofa sat my mother. And on her lap was Marisa looking up at her. And Mama was telling her how much she missed my dad. And how she couldn't wait till it was time to go to heaven and we'd all be together again. And I didn't want to interrupt them, so I went back upstairs, confident in the knowledge that I was going to be sharing Maurice's affection until my mother was gone. And I hope that that would be a long, long time. Thank you. Times have changed. Back when I was growing up, the general rule was that children should be seen and not heard. And while that philosophy had its advantages, it also tended to build a wall between parent and child. I was really blessed. Somebody tore that wall down for me while I was just a little girl, and he did it in a most unusual way. In fact, they still talk about the punishment in my family. And now that both of my parents are gone and the oath of secrecy to which I was sworn is no longer binding, I feel that I should step forward and tell the true story of the punishment at last. You see, my father did not believe in hitting children. Reason, he said, was a much better deterrent than force. Now, my mama felt differently about the matter. She said that a hard whack with an open hand on a bare bottom was the only thing that a small child could understand. And so my mother was the disciplinarian in our house. She would mete out punishment that was quick and painful, though not undeserved, while my father chose to ignore the things that we did wrong and shower us with praise whenever we did anything right. And as a result of these two diametrically opposed theories of child rearing, we children doted on my father. We treated my mother with only a cold and somewhat guarded respect, and she was a little jealous of that. In fact, I heard her say to my daddy one day, Ted, them young'uns love you more than they love me, and it's because you let them get away with murder. Daddy objected to that. That's not so, Pauline. Them young'uns don't love me more. Why, it's just that you're so stern all the time, they're afraid to show you any affection. Now, punishing a child that's done something wrong is all fine and good, but it wouldn't hurt you to show a little compassion once in a while. That made my mama irate. Compassion? I'll show them some compassion when they learn to behave. Now, Ted Wright, I've always said you're a wise man. Times like this, I start to wonder. See, my mama was tired of always being the bad guy. One day she decided to do something about it. I was in the 3rd grade, getting ready to go to school when I asked my mama if I could go home with my friend Kathy after school. My mama said, no. I went anyway. And as I was walking home late that afternoon, I knew what was going to be waiting for me when I got there. My mother standing on the front porch with one hand on her hip and a freshly picked switch in the other. But that was okay, because I had had a ball at Kathy's that afternoon. I had had so much fun that I didn't mind getting switched for it. Besides, my mama was only 85 pounds. She did not pack much of a wallop. But when I got home, what I expected was not what I found. My mama was not on the front porch with a switch. She was inside, arms folded across her chest, shaking with anger. And as I came in the front door, my mother looked at my father and she said, Ted, I want you to take that young'un into that back room and I want you to whoop her good because I'm so mad. If I do it, I'm like to kill her. My daddy said, all right, Pauline. I wasn't expecting that. He took me by the hand, and he took me in that back room, and he shut the door. Now, I don't mind telling you, my knees were wobbling like they were made out of Jell-O. My throat was so dry I could hardly breathe. And then my daddy looked at me, and he said, now, Linda, you know that what you did today was wrong, don't you? I just nodded because I was too scared to speak. Well, I told you, Ma, I was going to take care of this, knock me clear into tomorrow. But even worse than that was the humiliation of knowing that I would be the only kid that he had ever had to hit. He rolled up his sleeves. Now, Linda, this year's what I aim to do. I'm going to bang my hands together just as loud and just as hard as I can. And while I'm doing that, you're to carry on like it's you and that I'm a whopping. And you better be good about it, you hear? Because your ma is not an easy person to fool. Well, this put a whole new light on things. This could even be fun, and so my daddy started banging his hands together. Just as loud and just as hard as he could. I screamed and hollered and carried on. I even cried real tears. I decided right then and there that I was going to be an actress one day. Then Daddy stopped and he went like this. That was a secret sign between the two of us that what happened in that room that day would not pass either of our lips unless one of us was dead. Then Daddy opened the door, walked out into the living room. I followed behind, my face streaked with crocodile tears. When all of a sudden my mother ran up to me, threw my arms around me and said, "My baby!" Then she looked at my daddy and she said, "You did not have to hit her that hard." She didn't speak to him for 3 days after that. Now, after that, Daddy would volunteer to administer punishment when it was necessary. But Mama wouldn't let him. He didn't know his own strength, she said. And so things went back to the way they had always been, with my mother meting out punishment and my father doling out praise. The only thing that changed was me. Because after that day, I started feeling differently about my mama. And I actually started thinking before I said things that might hurt her feelings. And I quit purposely doing things that I knew would make her mad. In fact, when I look back on it now, I can see that my mother and I became quite close as a result of the punishment. Now, I've told you that both of my parents are gone now. But I'm sure that my father wouldn't mind about my telling this story to you this evening. In fact, I bet he's up in heaven right now getting a good chuckle hearing me tell it to you. And Mama, I like to think that she's right there beside him, smiling. And right about now, I bet she's turning to him and she's saying, well, Ted, I reckon you were right after all. It didn't hurt to show a little compassion once in a while. Now, that story started out as a story of my father punishing me, the first and only time that my father ever punished me. But in the end, it came out to something much richer. It became a story of how my mother and I turned to loving each other. In fact, that was the first hug that I'd ever gotten from my mother when she came out of the room that day. Thank you. One more quick story. You got to get a lesson at every storytelling performance, so this is going to be how to make a joke into a story. I'm not going to tell you what the joke part is, because you're going to hear it in the story, and it'd be too long and redundant if I did it twice. But this is a story about my friend Kelly. Kelly's in the 2nd grade. And last week she came home with an unusual homework assignment. She had to find out why fire trucks are red. Well, she needed some help. And the first person she asked was her daddy. "Daddy, can you tell me why fire trucks are red?" "Yeah, well, they're red because they're embarrassed." She should have known better than to ask her daddy. He made a joke out of everything. So she asked her mama, "Mama, can you tell me why fire trucks are red?" Her mother was a no-nonsense type. "They're red because somebody painted them that color." Well, that sounded right, but I didn't think that that was the answer my teacher was looking for. So finally, I started to ask the smartest person I knew, my grandmother. "Grandmama, can you tell me why fire trucks are red?" "Oh, sure I can. That's easy, actually. It's like this. Now, 1 plus 1, that's 2. 2 plus 2 is 4. 4 times 3 is 12. That's right, isn't it?" I thought so. Now, I went into the hardware store last week and I bought myself a foot ruler. Queen Murray was a ruler, and so was Queen Elizabeth. And Queen Elizabeth was also the name of a ship that sailed the 7 seas. And what are in those 7 seas? fish. And every single one of them fish have fins. And the fins, well, they got uppity and they went off to fight the Russians. You've heard this before. And Russians are also called Reds. And fire trucks are always Russian, and that's why fire trucks are red.